Good evening, everyone. Here we are on Wednesday, August the 6th for Wave Extra in the Wave Now studio. I'm Jose Sosaya, joined by our Wave News reporter, Alena Noakes. And Alena has had quite a long day. Alena, for you, it started going over to Nelson County from this morning, sticking around for the afternoon. But the big update you had shared with us in the afternoon was, of course, the decision that came down, that sentence for Steve Lawson, again, one of the three men who we know was convicted for his role and their respective roles in Crystal Rogers. And my understanding, as you were breaking that for us, Alena, it was the recommendation coming in was 17 years, and that ultimately is what Steve Lawson received as his punishment.
Yes.
And so talk to us, this is an interesting experience in the fact that, we discussed in all this time, Alena, just the inability for our video cameras to be in there for much of when the actual trial arguments, evidence, exhibits were going on.
Right.
But here we were, you and a crew able to step inside, at least have a camera so that you all could track and monitor what was going on. I'm curious, because we're going to play some of the video you all were able to get, but walk me through perhaps if you had any expectations going into the courtroom, and your biggest takeaways from what here the audience and the community had heard from here just with Steve Lawson and the sentence he received.
Yeah, I think expectation-wise, you never really know what to expect. A lot of sentences tend to be pretty straightforward, I guess. At least in my observation, not many times have I seen a judge that will, with a jury's recommendation on something like a case like this, necessarily go against what the jury has recommended, only if they see some circumstance in which they might have to. So I kind of expected 17 years to be what the judge went with, and ultimately he did. Didn't really say much, just said, of course, the jury finding Steve Lawson guilty and then recommending 17 years on the conspiracy to commit murder and 5 on tampering to be served concurrently, meaning at the same time, and that's the exact same thing that Judge Charles Sims handed down in this case. So expectation-wise on the sentence itself, I kind of expected it to be 17 years, but you never really know when you go into a courtroom because ultimately it's up to the judge to decide. It's only really if they hear something pressing from either the defense or prosecution, if it really sways them in any way.
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, but because it's coming into today, I don't know if we would have expected anyone, at least on Steve Lawson's side. We did hear, a defense witness come up when it was his actual trial, at least to, I guess, act as remind me through the actual steps if it was, defense witnesses the counsel would bring up, but then I guess after the fact of the jury makes its decision of guilty or not guilty, and if there was, I guess I'm trying to think back if it was in Joseph Lawson's case or in Steve Lawson's that there was sort of a character witness to speak to kind of making the case to lessen the recommendation of his actual punishment. I don't know if that was the case today since we heard sort of victim impact statements.
Right. No. In fact, in Steve Lawson's case, the only person who spoke on that note after the guilt phase was his mother, who also testified for the prosecution. I guess it was the defense witness, if I'm remembering correctly, actually,
yes,
in the trial itself. And then she testified, basically asking the jury, saying, I know that, he's said all this to me on a jail call. I'm as shocked as anybody else is, but please, he is my child.
Sure.
She did ask for mercy in that regard. And I mean, who knows? I mean, that was something you always take into account. Sometimes you see it happen in that recommendation phase for a sentence, that they do bring someone up to testify to a character side.
Sure.
And, obviously that's to hopefully have some kind of sway in what the jury would ultimately decide on something like this. Today we didn't hear anybody on Steve Lawson's side, but we did hear from 2 people with the prosecution, who of course were Crystal Rogers' family members. 2 of them, Mike Ballard, her uncle, and her sister, Brooke Bryan, both spoke to Steve Lawson directly. Probably the most pointed I've ever seen somebody on the stand in the duration of this case from both trials. Both of them just not backing down as they looked at him, giving their remarks. Really some strong words, very emotional for them both. Very difficult to sit and listen to because you can still tell 10 years later just how fresh this case is. And just finally see it come to a disposition where a person has not only been found guilty by a jury, but that pending any kind of appeal, they will be serving a sentence in prison for the crime that they've been convicted of. That is got a certain kind of weight to it once you sit across from them in the courtroom in the sentencing portion. And you could absolutely tell that. Of course, Steve Lawson, as we know, has during his trial, admitted to helping to move Crystal Rogers' car, but said he had no part of any kind of plan to kill her, even making suggestions during trial that maybe she's not even dead. We don't really know what happened to her. Obviously, a jury didn't believe that, and of course, Crystal Rogers' family didn't believe that. And if you listen to them, oftentimes they really are not holding back when they believe that he knows more than he's letting on. I mean, they made that very clear today when they talked to him. Namely, repeatedly begging him, or I don't want to say begging him, but pleading with him to have compassion and to please tell them where Crystal Rogers' body is at, because they believe that he absolutely knows where she is. Of course, no one has come forward with any successful tips at this point to indicate where she is, but that's their hopeful attempt that he will do that. And I want to point out one thing that Mike Ballard specifically said on the stand when he's talking to him about this today.
Sure thing. And what we're going to play here is Crystal's uncle, Mike Ballard, in that pink polo. So I'll pull that sound up right here.
I want to ask you to look at Crystal's family, look at her kids, look at Sherry. Don't you think they need to know where their mother's buried so they can have peace and at least lay their mom to rest the way it should be done? And they deserve that. Wouldn't you want that if it was your mother or your daughter? Then you need to stand up, be a man, and do the right thing, because you're going to prison. But if you do one right thing in your life, this is the thing to do. Let them know where their mom is.
Now, what you see happening there is a working camera. We were moving from Mike Ballard himself to then Steve Lawson to see if he reacted at all, because, of course, Mike is telling him there, please look at the family as I say this to you. And then we turn to Sherry Ballard and the rest of Crystal Rogers' family. I do want to know that I watched Steve Lawson the whole time. It did not seem to me at any point that he did turn and look at the family as Mike made those remarks.
Sure.
And not really often that he reacted much at all. He did nod whenever he was presented at the very end of Mike Ballard's testimony in the stand. He showed him a picture of Crystal and her kids right before she disappeared, saying this is the last photo we have of her close to when she disappeared. And he nodded. He seemed to be getting maybe some kind of emotion. I just don't really know what it was necessarily. But when it came to that soundbite, he's asking him, please look at the family as you consider these things. He didn't do that.
And he was not the only one, Alena, to sort of make those quite pointed words, not mincing their emotion, at least for Crystal's family, because we were seeing a sort of a switchover as Mike was leaving the microphone where he was sitting. That is Crystal's sister, Brooke, is who you said, Brooke Bryan. And there was also a sliver of what she was reading from her own statement. I can play it up if you would like. Just sort of let us know what the context is, kind of what she was really hinting at in her words to Steve Lawson there in the courtroom. Yeah,
because I think it's important before we start. This is something both Mike Ballard and Brooke said. It's their belief that Steve Lawson participated in this plan, this conspiracy to murder Crystal Rogers, and the reason why they believe that he knows more than he's letting on, they say it was for him to continue to get guaranteed work from Brooks Houck, as well as a little bit of money on the side. And that's what they believe was his motivations behind this, and that's kind of what she speaks to here, but reminds him that no matter what he thought he was getting out of this, now he has to live with this decision in prison. Take a listen.
You took away a life because of greed and selfishness. I hope every day you spend in prison reminds you of what you did and who you destroyed. I hope the weight of the truth sits heavy on you, and one day you'll have to answer for what you did. You may have helped take her life away, but you'll never take our memories. You'll never erase her name. Her story lives on, and we'll make sure that the world never forgets who Crystal was.
And I thought this, what she said really struck a chord, at least with the courtroom, when you know this family and you know what they have done. Just take a look at the video right now. It's all these signs. First for Crystal, missing signs, some that are still, many actually, that are still up throughout the county. And when she's saying that we will make sure the world never forgets who Crystal was, that's how they want the world to remember her. A smiling face, somebody who was a kind mother to five children who didn't get to see them grow up. Someone who was well loved by her family, and that's just so seen in the outpouring of support that they have had from her since day one. And truly, the world has not forgotten. If we know this case and this area knows this case, it has made national news, it has made world news, and certainly has continued to do so even during trial. So that was not a point lost, I would hope, on Steve Lawson, as well as our audience today.
And for those who, maybe have been following us, it could go, further back than when we joined the team at Wave News, to those initial years, Alena, when we know Crystal first went missing. And obviously there's a rush to try to find all those answers, but here we've come 10 years after the fact. Whatever semblance of closure this is for the family on this front, here it is with at least one of these three sentencing. And at the same time, I would note in Mike Ballard's case, you have gone to talk to him recently because, unfortunately for the family, there's a sense that the justice still is incomplete because of the mystery surrounding Crystal's father, and sort of asking, what if anything has to do with the initial search for her and then losing Tommy Ballard, and sort of whatever's left to solve in that particular mystery.
And that's something that Mike Ballard and Brooke both really talked about today. Just how often Tommy was brought up was probably as many times as Crystal's name came up as well, because it, of course, is their belief that Tommy Ballard was killed as a result of how close he got to finding out the truth of what happened to his daughter. Mike Ballard today talking about how Steve Lawson knew, because he lived in the county, he knew Tommy, things like that. He knew about this case, that he knew that Tommy spent every waking hour searching for his daughter, and that basically he had every opportunity during that time before Tommy was killed in 2016 to have said something about what happened to Crystal Rogers, about what he knew about this case, and that his refusal to do so to Mike Ballard spoke very much to the kind of person that he considers Steve Lawson to be. And that obviously that idea that they've talked about, that we've played the sound about already with Mike Ballard, help us, please tell us. If you can make one right choice in your life, tell us where she is. And that's something that they want to know, but they also want to know those answers because they believe Tommy Ballard's case is so closely connected to Crystal Rogers' case. And both of these remain very active in the search for Crystal Rogers' body, but also in the search for answers about what happened to Tommy that we to this day have no one in custody for, no one charged for. So those were very present truths in this courtroom today, Crystal as much as Tommy, and the pain that this family is feeling as they continue to process the involvement of these individuals in Crystal Rogers' crime, and potentially, at least as put by the prosecution in Tommy Ballard's case as well.
For sure. And before we let you go, Alena, to your point, perhaps that there's no end point, perhaps, to at least because you have been there in person, sort of seeing the up and down of emotions, but just sort of these decisions that have come from the jury, the cases presented either side, but in essence, just Crystal Rogers' family, and even all those in the courtroom, just the finality of some of these decisions by the verdict. And here we have one of the three sentences in total, because we're still expecting two more. And so before I let you go, I just wanted to remind folks, I'm going to pull this image up, because the two other men convicted in what happened to Crystal Rogers, they are still waiting for their sentencing. So we know Brooks Houck, her then boyfriend, convicted of complicity to murder, tampering with evidence. in this case, we were there with that decision, Alena. I remember the jury recommending a life sentence for him. Steve Lawson's son involved as well, Joseph, with the two exact kinds of charges that Steve was convicted of. For him, the recommendation 25 years for his role in the crime. So here we are, basically 2 weeks removed from all that. I don't know if there was an opportunity, if you happen to catch anyone kind of leaving the courtroom after understanding what Steve's punishment was, but we can, I guess there's educated guessing based on all of our reporting of what that sentencing hearing might bring and the emotions that are going to swell.
I mean, you can imagine the emotions are going to swell because during Brooks Houck's trial, that of course was the one where you had members of his family, whereas today you didn't have any members of Steve Lawson's family in the courtroom, at least that I noted during this. So, you can imagine it's going to be emotional on its own, much like this one was, perhaps more. I think that was kind of how we gauged the courtroom to also be during Brooks Houck's trial versus Steve Lawson. And it's not to downplay Steve Lawson and their belief in his role in this crime. It's just to say that obviously someone so close to them at that time in Brooks Houck, the implication and conviction and now sentencing and the finality of it, especially with a life sentence on the table, would be something that would be very emotional and painful in a way that there's that finality to it. Yeah. So we'll just have to see. I mean, I don't want to guess too much on something like this about what it may actually look like, how it may actually pan out. Sure. You never really know in a courtroom, but today's proceedings wrapped up in 15 minutes. I did not expect them to go 15 minutes. It was fairly quick. But who knows what we'll really see or from who we'll see that from.
And the unique factor of, again, just for our purposes and the way we're able to, document, do our reporting and share that with you, at least, when it comes to the tools we have at Wave News, of course, we can still have used the sketches that the artist drew for us. So shout out to Sidney Young and the rigorous note-taking. And here it'll be sort of the difference in the ability to get those nuances through a video camera. At least that's the expectation going into the 2 weeks.
So the next one, I don't think it's going to change. There were still restrictions in place today for this one. We, for instance, while we had a camera, it was only one camera, a pool camera is what we call it. So all the stations, if you noticed, our feeds look the same. It's because we use the same camera. And on top of that, we also were not allowed to type on our phones, to use our computers, to live tweet, post, stream, anything. That's a restriction that's been put in place on this one. Every courtroom is different, of course, but there tends to be a little bit, it's all up to the judge, tends to be a little more leniency in most cases when it comes to that kind of activity among a media member. But that's been obviously put on hold during these trials, and we're just at least glad that we were able to show our audience something today from inside the courtroom, because we know how much it means to this community, especially there in Nelson County, to have this kind of finality to this case.
Absolutely. And so whenever that date comes, and we're looking at the calendar, Alena, we said August 21st, the expectation, if you would not be there, I assume that is the default, but just to have our team there to report it and then come back with that decision 2 weeks from now. But we always like to say, Alena has been our eyes and ears really through much of the process, being there in both different counties, not just for here the sentencing, down in Warren County when the actual trials were playing out, coming out to the sentencing. All this reporting, by the way, updated constantly on wave3.com. Just look for Alena's reporting, the full video of both trials, not just for Steve Lawson, but for Brooks Houck and for Joseph Lawson's shared trial as well. Just all there for you to review at your pace as you can. I want to thank Alena, of course. Thank you for coming by and breaking this down for us. We're going to take a quick commercial break. As far as the sound that Alena was able to get for us this afternoon, we're also going to have that when you join us on Wave News at 11, so make sure you stick around to hear that as well. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be right back here on Wave Extra. Welcome back to Wave Extra on this Wednesday, August 6th. Here we are, 8:26. Jose Sosaya in the studio. I want to thank again our reporter Alena Noakes for stepping here live in studio to break down a little bit of that sound we'd heard from today's sentencing for Steve Lawson, one of the three men who was ultimately convicted in Crystal Rogers' disappearance and presumed murder. The recommendation from the jury having been max of 17 years for Steve Lawson, and that was the decision for him to serve that time of sentence in prison. So we have more headlines for you tonight as you're joining us, not just on your Wave Now app from home, but there are multiple different channels on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, Twitch. Appreciate you sticking around for us. So here's more headlines, updates for you as you're kind of winding down your day at home. This is having to do with the case of former LMPD officer Brett Hankison. I'm going to pull some of that video up. We're now learning he's appealing his conviction. So that was the conviction recently for having violated Breonna Taylor's civil rights and appealing his 33-month prison sentence. So we learned that appeal was filed in federal court yesterday, so that would have been Tuesday. Hankison's attorneys didn't specify why they want the court to overturn the conviction and sentence, but we do know in the trial itself he was found guilty of violating Taylor's civil rights, firing blindly into her apartment, even though those bullets he fired did not hit anyone. Under the sentence that the judge imposed after serving 33 months in federal prison, Hankison would then go on probation for 3 years. Moving on to more headline updates, new at 8 o'clock. There's a resolution here in Metro Council urging parents and guardians to know where their kids are at night, and it looks like it is gaining some forward momentum. It was a measure introduced by Councilmember Barbara Shanklin as a response, she put it, to some violence that's happened around kids lately this summer. Shanklin says with school starting, it's important for parents to be actively involved in creating a safe city, not just for themselves as families, but for everyone.
I've seen where a couple of kids that got killed at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're just trying to encourage moms to, even if she had to get up during the night, get up and check to see if little Billy or whoever's in the house, because they do slip out.
Now, the resolution as it stands, there's no punishment specifically laid out that's explicit for parents who would not follow said resolution. Although this afternoon it did pass from that committee where the council member had proposed this, it is heading to the full council for consideration at their upcoming meeting. More headlines for you. I'm going to pull up the video to show you here. It's a deadly shooting at a Beechville apartment complex. Metro Police say they are hunting for a killer right now. We're told this happened at around 5:45 early this morning on Norbrook Drive off Faganbush Lane. Police say they got a call that there was a shooting and found a man when they found his body. He'd already died. His name has not been released as of our last check here in the Wave Now studio. And if you know anything about the homicide case, you are also asked to contact LMPD's tip line. And then some insight, or the latest we're able to pull from perhaps one of the bigger stories nationwide, just a jarring thing, to have come through your email inbox when you find out of a shooting taking place at an Army or military installation. In this case, you've likely been following the latest from what's gone on and what we're able to learn from Fort Stewart in East Georgia. And from our understanding, heading into this part of the evening, afternoon, of course, terrifying moments at the Army base. A sergeant apparently opening fire on those fellow soldiers in Fort Stewart. In total, 5 people were shot, but all of them are expected to survive. Tonight, we also know that suspected gunman is in custody. What investigators don't know, at least at this point, is what would have motivated the shooting. I believe this is latest report from one of our affiliate networks, so one of our sister stations out there that covers this part of Georgia, and so we have an update from them.
We now know the name of the suspect, Sergeant Cornelius Radford, for the shooting that injured 5 people at Fort Stewart behind me here. This is the front gate. I'll step out here as I give you some more of the details that you can look as cars start to matriculate their way back onto the base after it was locked down for several hours earlier this morning and into the early afternoon. We found out from a commander general of the base that Sergeant Radford worked at an annex at the farthest part of the base from where we are now, really way up at the north end, and that the shooting involved where he worked on the base and people that he worked with. However, they would not go into any kind of motive. That's still under investigation at this point. But the 5 injured, we know that 3 were taken. They needed some sort of surgery after the shooting, but all 5 are expected to recover, and their families have been notified at this point. And the Commander General gave us an update as to what's going to be going on next.
Sergeant Radford has been interviewed by the Army Criminal Investigation Division and is currently in pretrial confinement, awaiting a charging decision by the Office of the Special Trial Counsel. Right now, our primary focus is first on caring for our injured soldiers and their families, and also supporting the soldiers of the Spartan Brigade.
I asked after the briefing if Sergeant Bradford had any injuries from the shooting, and they said that that is unclear at this point. You can see the front gate to Fort Stewart is now reopened. Those lockdowns have been lifted. At Fort Stewart, Zach Wilcox, NBC.
And so our thanks to Zach Wilcox for that report from just outside of Fort Stewart. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break here on Wave Extra, and after that, we're going to walk through a report we just shared with you on Wave News at 5 and 6, and some really stunning new LMPD SWAT video, and this is of a drone they're using. And if you remember, there was a breaking standoff that several of us on this shift with the office, we were told there was this kind of standoff and barricade situation in Shively, and thankfully everything was de-escalated. But coming up after the break, we're going to show you, just this inside stunning visual with the camera recording to try and assess the dangers inside that house for SWAT to then come in and try to pull the person they were looking for out as safely as they could. So hope you stick around to see that bird's eye or drone's eye view tool. And we're going to have that coming up after a very quick break here on Wave Extra. All right, everyone, 8:34. Welcome back to Wave Extra on this Wednesday. So as I let you know before we took this quick break, coming back and joining us on all our different channels, LMPD today sharing with us some pretty dramatic video of a dangerous SWAT standoff. This was inside of a home in Shively. It happened 12 days ago. It didn't feel as long, but just know it was pretty recent. A heavily armed man was refusing to come out of his house. There were some calls people had made thinking that the neighborhood was in danger. And so this is what our Wave News reporter David Mattingly spent his day digging into more of the information and analyzing what was in that video. The highlights of the video are really that it could be life-saving technology for more than just one party involved. Today we'd heard some commentary from LMPD's SWAT commander, making it at least clear in his position lives could have been lost. That standoff could have taken days to resolve. At least that was his opinion. But instead, they said it took those hours in the afternoon to use some explosives just to deter and kind of force the suspect out, and also some new drone technology that you're about to see.
Officers, there's our armored vehicle. You can see where we've now opened up that front door.
Narrated by SWAT Commander Joel Cassie, we're getting a drone's eye view inside the home of an armed suspect who has refused to surrender. Instead of sending officers in to the risky situation, the drone reveals the first floor is clear. The suspect is holed up in the basement, and the back door is jammed shut with a home security device.
It's sitting inside the kitchen. We're watching that back door from inside. And the only way for us to safely open up that back door to get access to the basement was to use an explosive charge.
Neighbors on Woodmere Avenue were kept at a distance. The armored SWAT vehicle could not fit in the backyard, so the explosive device was set and attached to the back door.
And what this allows us to do as well is set that charge and then fall back to cover to where we can now open that door safely and not be in harm's way.
And 14 seconds later, boom. As the door flies off the frame, what we can't see or hear are the bullets flying out from behind the basement door. Police then used gas to force the gunman out. His wife was in the basement with him.
This is our suspect coming out. You saw the red circle. He actually had a pistol on that bulletproof vest that he was wearing.
Next, a drone flight into the basement reveals multiple bullet holes and the danger that was waiting for officers below.
You can see it's a super cluttered basement, and the video is just a little bit longer, but as he rounds this corner here with the drone, you'll see there was at least one rifle there staged, ready to go. That scenario 10 years ago probably would have had one of our guys going up there with a sledgehammer or a ram, hitting that door and getting hit. And we probably would have lost 2 or 3 guys.
So there you heard from LMPD SWAT commander and the technology that kept officers alive. He says in that situation did the same for the suspect and his wife, who you saw come out of that back door. Again, the suspect's name we learned was William Fry, still facing multiple charges, including attempted murder of a police officer. You saw the spray of bullets that were coming from below there in the basement. Fry, in this case, has still pleaded not guilty. So great update and a report there from our David Mattingly. Now to some more headlines for you, and I'm going to switch over this graphic so you can see that. So Louisville's Office of Fire Prevention has a new permanent leader. Earlier today, Mayor Craig Greenberg said James Tatum is going to stay in the role. Here's a picture of Tatum. He's been the interim director since April. Mayor Greenberg saying that Tatum has helped oversee a rebrand from what was previously the Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. So again, now the new name for this particular agency branch within Metro government is the Office of Violence Prevention. Tatum has also previously served as the department's assistant director of administration before then taking over this specific leadership position within the office unit in that regard. Another update for you tonight as we switch over to this. It's a former front office manager at the Hilton Garden Inn in downtown Louisville. And we learned he's facing felony theft charges because he's accused of stealing more than $22,000 in less than 6 months. So this is a picture provided by Corrections. Travis Ager is accused of sending unwarranted refunds on past hotel stays, but to credit and debit cards that were not matching former guests. Court documents alleging Ager actually did more than 100 of these fake refunds, and at least 74 of them went into his checking account. So that is what detectives are describing and what warranted his eventual arrest. Ager was suspended, then later fired by the hotel. Hey, we're back in the studio, and as we're going to round out tonight's edition of Wave Extra, we've got a couple updates, some of them pertaining to school districts' power and what the state Supreme Court has to say about that. Another about a measure relating to Metro's relationship to the EPA to lower gas prices. And one more interesting story from part of our photojournalist crew as a family foundation trying to do the good work it does here in the community. We're going to take another quick break. Be right back on Wave Extra. Thank you, everyone, for staying with us on tonight's Wave Extra here in the Wave Now studio. Jose Sosaya here at the desk. Got some more updates from our reporting team, working hard throughout the day. And so this one has to do with those gas prices I was mentioning a couple minutes ago. So if you've noticed prices, depending on where you like to stop and fuel up around the metro, they've been higher, at least more concentrated around here than in other parts of Wave Country. You might be noticing a bit of a trend. Right now, Louisville is required to sell what's called reformulated gas, which burns cleaner, improving air quality. But that does cost drivers an extra 10 to 35 cents a gallon. So today, with an update, Wave News reporter Kirsten Foote explains that the mayor's office is making a push to end at least that particular policy. And here we're going to see if I can get that. Yes, beauties of live TV. We're going to pause that and play Kirsten Foote's report right here.
You often hear stories about pain at the pump and high gas prices, but for Jefferson County drivers, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. That's because on Wednesday, Mayor Greenberg announced that Louisville has reached the requirements for RFG removal. He's now sent a letter to the Environmental Protection Agency asking them to expedite its review and approval of the request. Greenberg says the county reached the ability to have the requirement removed last year, and with LG&E working to replace one of their coal firing units at Mill Creek, he says they'll be able to maintain that status. He says the requirement adds an extra 10 to 35 cents a gallon. Ending this would ultimately lead to lower prices for drivers. For example, if ending the requirement saves drivers 25 cents per gallon, that results in $137 million in savings, something that gives drivers in the area a positive outlook on their wallets.
I'd love to be able to pay less than $4 a gallon. Right now, gas is so ridiculous, nobody can go nowhere. You know, it's getting to the point where it's like you got to take a loan out just go get a gallon of gas and groceries, I mean, everything.
It's not clear when the requirement will be lifted. Mayor Greenberg says that he submitted everything he needs to the EPA. Now he says that the ball is in their court and will watch and wait. Reporting in Louisville, Kirsten Foote, Wave News.
So some perspective there for potential cost savings with a policy for folks in Wave Country, and now extending to some business where it's involving, you know, the state levers of power with the Kentucky Supreme Court and really with the state's largest school district. So this morning we know Supreme Court justices sat down to listen to attorneys arguing about Senate Bill 1 and the law. There's a focus within it about how Jefferson County Public Schools operates. Critics of the new SB 1, or relatively new SB 1, saying that it actually singles out JCPS because it doesn't apply anywhere else in the state to other school districts. Supporters of the bill, though, disagree. They want to back the original intent and goal behind SB 1 itself. Wave News reporter Marissa Burke is breaking down those arguments made before the justices.
A law affecting JCPS is at the center of debates again. The law was passed in 2022, it was challenged in 2024, and now it's being reheard by Kentucky Supreme Court justices. Senate Bill 1 changes how JCPS would operate. This law says the superintendent would preside over day-to-day operations, and the school board would be in charge of long-term policy and planning. Critics of SB 1 feel like Kentucky's largest school district is being singled out. Matthew Kuhn, the Solicitor General of Kentucky, says laws are not one size fits all.
The purchase of developmental rights for farmlands here in Fayette County, for example, all of those are class of 1 laws. They only apply in one county in Kentucky. And so they're unique to Senate Bill 1 in that perspective. And the Attorney General's office position is that all of those laws are constitutional for the exact same reasons that Senate Bill 1 is constitutional.
Kuhn believes this will be a blockbuster case if it's thrown out. Advocates of Senate Bill 1 say it will speed up the decision-making process by putting more power in the hands of the JCPS superintendent. Those against this law believe its implications are far-reaching.
If the court says that this statute is involved with the management of the common schools, that's all that the case will stand for. If the court wants to go beyond that and to revisit some of its earlier decisions, there's a very clear pathway for the court to do that in a rational way.
If Senate Bill 1 is overturned, Attorney General Russell Coleman says the next logical step could be to declare the Louisville-Jefferson County merger unconstitutional. As of now, no decisions have been made. In Lexington, Marissa Burke, Wave News.
And now to one more thing before we part for the evening. It's a story of a family who's turned grief into hope for high school seniors who are going off to college. And we talk a lot about the theme. Here we are less than 12 hours now for JCPS kids and parents and families, everyone starting up the brand new school year. This was the story of Nathan Wimsett. He was 2 weeks away from graduating from Spencer County High when he was tragically killed in a car accident. So his family created a scholarship fund in his honor. Now there's actually a children's book doing the exact same thing, talking about his story, and at the end helping support the cause of the Family Foundation. So shout out to Wave News photojournalist Chris Stowe, who shows us how the idea then became reality.
This was an exciting undertaking for us. We were at one of our fundraisers, and one of our friends recommended us writing a book. He knew about Nathan, he knew about the story and his love for cars, and we kind of just brushed it off at first. But the more we thought about it, we're like, yeah, that would be a good idea if we could pull it off.
At first we were, there's no way we're going to write this book. But then the more we sat on our grieving process, it only made the perfect sense to do that, to honor Nathan. We were on a road trip out west. We would come up with some lines, we would call each other and say, yeah, that's really good. And then you just put it all together.
It's a children's book, Nathan's Jeep Comanche. When he was 14 years old, he wanted to restore some kind of unique vehicle, and he came up with the Jeep Comanche.
When they would go work on the projects, they would take pictures, and they would send me the pictures, and then we went off of this book to do this book. When Nathan had passed away, we had money from GoFundMe that people had donated in honor for his funeral expenses, and we didn't know what to do, so we came up with the idea of starting a scholarship fund in honor of our son.
The scholarship fund, it focuses on seniors at Spencer County High School that plan on going to trade school or a college. So a portion of the proceeds from the book goes to fund the scholarships. We're excited and proud that since the scholarship fund began in 2023, we've now given away $50,000. That brings us some joy.
We're serving others in his name, in his honor, and that makes our heart happy that he's not physically here, but we can do something in his honor, in his memory, that helps other people.
Great to see them sort of being able to share the story and the love Nathan had for cars there. Now, if you're interested in learning more about how the Wimsett family is working right now, the more of the work they're going to do to honor him, what the foundation is doing, you can visit the website. It is nathanlanewimsett.org, and I believe there might be some information you can check out when we can take you to the website, which is actually where I'm going to take you right now. A reminder, back to school 2025, all your questions as far as start times and dates, that's there in this main story. Scroll down and you can have all the latest updates for not just Wave Country stories, but around Kentucky. The latest national news also gets pushed into the homepage as well, but you have all the different categories you could search. Again, one of the many great resources you can always check out, the website, the free apps you can download to your smartphone and get those push alerts sent right to your home screen. Always a good resource to have if you want to make sure you're staying up to date. That's going to wrap up things for us tonight. Appreciate you joining us on Wave Extra. We will be back here tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. Hope you join us, by the way, for Wave News at 11. It'll be the team that's ready to go on Wednesdays throughout the rest of the week. That's myself, Chief Meteorologist Kevin Harned, our team of reporters, Logan Perrone and Julia Richardson here as well to share the stories that they've been working on and those updates for you. So take care, everyone. For JCPS families and for the kids we assume are asleep, but for any parents joining us tonight, best of luck. Hopefully everything is safe, smooth, and successful for you all. And of course, all the people behind the scenes, bus drivers, school crossing guards, teachers, that everything works out exactly as it should. Not preventing any headaches because that's impossible, but hopefully things go as smoothly as they can. We will see you back here tomorrow. Take care, everyone.